Year 10, 2024. A world in chaos. The movie unfolds in a haunting, desolate landscape heavily infused with tension and suspense. From the outset, sounds of snapping twigs, wild dog growls, and rustling leaves create a foreboding atmosphere, establishing that the world is fraught with danger and possibly lawlessness. Lack of modern weaponry, with bows and knives becoming the instruments of survival, indicates a society that has collapsed into primitive survival tactics. The narrative introduces a young protagonist, potentially a girl, who finds herself desperately fleeing from an unseen threat. Her panicked breaths and the surrounding sounds suggest she is being hunted, amplifying the movie's atmosphere of dread. A father figure briefly enters the scene, but his presence is abruptly cut short, depicted through groans and a sudden thud, signaling his demise early on and leaving the protagonist to fend for herself in this perilous world. Antagonists emerge as a brutal hunting party led by a ruthless figure and accompanied by trained wild dogs. The film showcases a poignant scene of a girl sobbing while tied up, highlighting the dark potential of these captors, likely pulling their victims for sinister motives. As the protagonist navigates this dire landscape, her struggles for survival intensify. Various scenes depict bound and gagged individuals, muffled screams, and desperate gasps, emphasizing the psychological strain of living in such a terrifying environment. At one point, the protagonist or another character experiences a moment of intense fear or pain, culminating in vomiting, reinforcing the debilitating terror that permeates their existence. The confrontations escalate as the protagonist begins to resist her pursuers. A particularly gripping moment arises when the sound of a machete being sharpened foreshadows an imminent brutal showdown. The atmosphere becomes charged with tension as sounds of choking gunfire and bodies collapsing hint at a climactic battle with the gang leader. As the fight unfolds, wild dogs wreak havoc, leading to horrific screams that underline the savage nature of the conflict. The climax sees the gang leader meeting his end, possibly consumed by the very beasts he once employed to instill fear. The protagonist's journey culminates in a bittersweet resolution. While there is a sense of relief in overcoming the immediate threat, the lingering ambience of uncertainty underscores that survival in this world remains perilous. In conclusion, the film brilliantly captures a chaotic world teetering on the brink of savagery, exploring themes of survival, fear, and the indomitable spirit of humanity amidst ruins. The eerie music sets a dark tone, effectively complementing the tense visual storytelling of the protagonist's harrowing journey through this treacherous landscape. In a tense atmosphere infused with the sounds of the wild, the narrative unfolds as someone navigates through the wilderness, captured by the sound of grass scrunching, twigs snapping, and dogs barking, implying a frantic escape or pursuit. The distant squeal of a pig marks the primal reality of hunting, whether for sustenance or sport. The first attack. The scene escalates as a bow creaks and an arrow whips through the air, followed sharply by the squeal of a pig, hinting at a life-or-death struggle for survival using primitive methods. Tension mounts with suspenseful music that envelopes the moment. Occasionally, modernity peeks through the chaos as objects clatter, plastic crinkles, and a car horn honks, suggesting the remnants of a past civilization. The cacophony of dogs snarling and barking further adds to the imminent threat. There's either a hunt underway or an attack in progress. The first capture. Transitioning to a darker turn, we witness a girl grunting and liquid pouring, accompanied by the sound of a car door clicking shut, signaling a moment of restraint or hostage-taking. The environment grows tenser, with leaves rustling, twigs snapping, and metal clanking, suggesting the presence of danger and movement nearby. A girl moans quietly in pain, perhaps injured or attempting to conceal herself, heightening the urgency. The dramatic scene intensifies as water splashes and a hatch bangs shut, indicating someone has been forcefully confined, hinting at a makeshift prison or underground hideout. The leader's entrance. The grim atmosphere thickens when a group of men groan and grunt, accompanied by the unsettling sound of a knife slicing into flesh, indicating a struggle that might culminate in execution. The eerie backdrop is accentuated by a girl's whimpering and the caws of birds, suggesting a bleak reality filled with brutality. Jake, likely the protagonist, breathes heavily and pants in frustration, possibly a witness to the violence, unable to intervene effectively. A desperate escape attempt. As the tension persists, a door creaks and the girl attempts to speak through a gag, revealing that she is held captive yet striving to communicate. The leader's actions as he sniffs the air denote that the captors are on the prowl, seeking escapees. Lamentation fills the air as a girl sobs against the backdrop of melancholic music, portraying profound helplessness. Meanwhile, Jake's heavy breathing suggests he is formulating a daring escape strategy. The harsh reality of survival. External dangers echo through the scene when the door shuts and footsteps squelch in the mud, coupled with howling wind that underscores the perils outside. Sounds of wood thudding and a person grunting reflect the struggle for warmth and survival amid despair. The finality of the moment is captured when the door slams shut, locking the characters within, encapsulating their vulnerability as they face a world fraught with threats, violence, and chaos. The beginning of the narrative introduces an atmosphere filled with tension and distress. Sounds of muffled, struggling, dramatic music and vomiting create an unsettling ambience, hinting at a violent ordeal likely involving torture or interrogation. A character's painful yell amid aggressive barking dogs suggests imminent danger as someone is clearly being attacked or pursued. The chaos intensifies with flames crackling and the menacing growls of wild dogs, alongside a desperate yelp from a mongrel, all of which contribute to a disordered environment fraught with peril. The climax. Fighting back. As the story reaches its peak, the struggle escalates into a brutal confrontation. Sounds of an axe swinging and a stone smashing, accompanied by panting, indicate a fierce fight unfolding. A boy moaning through a gag symbolizes a hostage's plight. A lieutenant's degrading act urinating while a captive moans urgently starkly showcases the captor's savage nature. Signals for intensified combat are evident as a leader whistles to his men. The auditory landscape reflects the friction with loud roars of fire, snap of bones, and muffled breathing, painting a picture where survival hangs in the balance amid violent encounters. The final confrontation. The soundscape evolves into the potent crescendo of an ultimate confrontation. In the backdrop, dogs barking mingle with the struggles of someone in their last stand, suggesting a climactic battle for the protagonist. The cry of a huntress, snarls of wild dogs, and the agonizing screams of a victim imply the downfall of the leader, possibly devoured by his own trained canines. As fatigue sets in, faint hints of uplifting music signify a potential moment of victory. However, a lieutenant's grunts followed by inevitable punches exchanged sets the stage for a final brawl. The narrative reaches a grim denouement as a knife is plunged, eliciting groans of pain, marking the lethal climax of the conflict. Final scene, an uncertain future. Emerging from this turmoil, the protagonist finds themselves panting from exhaustion on creaking wooden steps, accompanied by positive music that juxtaposes the previous chaos, signaling that survival has been achieved but at a hefty price. Preparations for the next chapter unfold as a bottle fills with water and food is gathered, hinting at a solitary journey ahead. The sound of a rifle cocking, only to be met with the ominous click of an empty gun, serves as a metaphor for the futility and emptiness of violence. Amidst shouts, thrown punches, and the echoing presence of a gunshot, the resolution of the conflict is reached. As dramatic music swells and fades into suspenseful silence, it leaves the audience reflecting on the themes of survival vs. humanity, predator and prey, and the glimmer of hope amid despair despite the omnipresent horrors. The dangers of power showcases the peril inherent in authority, as the captors led by the merciless leader misuse their dominance until they inevitably fall victim to their brutal choices. The narrative culminates in a climactic battle where the weary protagonist stumbles upon provisions, food, and water that symbolize fleeting hope amidst devastation. In the closing scenes, an ominous rifle is cocked but disappointingly found empty, serving as a metaphor for the futility of violence in a world fraught with chaos. The film concludes on an ambiguous note, enhanced by shifting music from tension to tranquility, leaving the audience questioning whether the protagonist will find solace or persist in a landscape plagued by aggression. Jake, presumably a young man in his late teens or early 20s, emerges as a symbol of resilience and resourcefulness, embodying primitive survival instincts. His evolution through the narrative illustrates a harrowing transformation from being preyed upon to assuming the role of the hunter. Jake experiences profound emotional and physical trauma, as signaled by his troubled breathing and audible expressions of pain and desperation. His bond with the girl adds emotional depth to his journey, emphasizing his motivation amidst despair. The girl personifies innocence and vulnerability in a savage world. Her audible distress, moaning, whimpering, and sobbing highlights her plight, positioning her as one of the few remaining symbols of nonviolence in the narrative. Her suffering drives Jake as he becomes motivated to protect her and escape their grim reality. Despite enduring significant physical and psychological scars, she survives, serving as a beacon of hope for Jake's character transformation. The leader, a brutal figurehead of the captors, manipulates those around him and resorts to employing wild dogs as instruments of terror, only to have them turn against him, a moment steeped in poetic justice. Ruthless and calculated, he stalks prey with a predatory instinct but ultimately meets a grisly end, torn apart by the very dogs he once commanded. His violent demise encapsulates the themes of power and retribution that resonate throughout the story. The lieutenant. Portrayed as a brutal enforcer, the lieutenant embodies cruelty and arrogance, particularly highlighted in scenes displaying his disdain for captives. Engaging Jake in a climactic confrontation, he reveals his physical prowess but ultimately succumbs, his death marked by a chilling silence, suggesting a brutal conclusion to their struggle. The huntress. The huntress presents a complex character caught between victimhood and aggression as she falters under an attack by dogs. Her outcome remains precarious, highlighting the unpredictability of survival in this hostile world. In this harrowing tale, Jake endures the final battle, amassing essential supplies that foreshadow a desperate struggle for continuation, even as his future looms uncertain amidst the remnants of violence and strife. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.